Welcome to the Circuit of Success Podcast.
The Circuit of Success Podcast.
With your host, Brett
Gilliland. Brett Gilliland, Visionary Wealth Advisory.
The Circuit of Success Podcast. Let's start the show.
Welcome to the Circuit of Success. I'm your host, Brett Gilliland. Today I've got Travis Thomas with me. Travis, what's going on, my man?
Brett, just excited to be here. Any place to be inside, stay warm, right now.
I appreciate you coming over here. I didn't know if we're going to have all these podcasts today or not. I'm 50.
Yeah.
I was supposed to do my biggest day of podcasting day. I was going to have back-to-back podcasts.
Yeah.
So 50% of them are on, so it's
All
still
right.
two.
I'm just 20 miles down the road,
Exactly.
So salt on the roads, I'm good to go.
Well, you were on a few years ago and had a great conversation. You've got this amazing book right here, Confidence is Overrated.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about that
Yeah.
as well in a little bit. But for people that maybe missed you a couple years ago and didn't listen to the show, give us a little lay of the land, what's made you the man you are today, and continue to do the impact that you make today.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So, professionally, I call myself a performance coach that focuses on mindset, team dynamics, and culture. And so I do, most of my work is kind of living in the two worlds, living in the sports world, working with the youth college and professional sports team, helping the athletes and the teams on the mindset side of things, mental skills, how to create a great team culture. And then I do that in the professional world as well, going and speaking to a lot of companies and organizations. Same kind of thing, helping corporate athletes, if you will, how to perform at a high level. What are those base mental skills? And then again, similarly, how do you create teams and organizations of high performers that not only perform at a high level, but also lean into that psychological safety, that trust, that respect, that value. And so it's a sustainable success as well. And so those are the two worlds that I kind of live in. They both sort of feed each other. I just love doing this work. I wasn't a psychologist. I'm not a therapist. I kind of backed into it in getting into the coaching space.
But play one every day.
I do play one on TV. I pretend. I always tell people, hey, I'm not a therapist or psychologist. Again, sports were a huge part of my youth, my childhood growing up in Flint, Michigan, played soccer in college, and then got into improvisation and improvisational comedy, which was a whole different slice of what it means to perform and be on the spot and have to stay in the present and think on your feet, but collaborate with uncertainty and others at the same time, and not knowing that was going to sort of be a unique lane that I was able to kind of carve for myself getting into the performance space. And so I love working with people and sort of unblocking obstacles that get in the way of success. And I'm just a lover of teams, and so helping teams kind of create those cultures that thrive. And so I'm in St. Louis right now. I've been working with St. Louis University for the last 4 years. Was with the U.S. men's national team for 3 years, FC Dallas the last 2 years, and just doing a lot of freelance work right now.
That's awesome. When you say confidence is overrated, let's set the stage. Why is it overrated?
Yeah, it's a great question. Confidence is overrated because it's not that confidence isn't important. It's not even necessarily that confidence is a bad thing, although it can be. Confidence is overrated because at the end of the day, it's a feeling. Confidence is a feeling. So, Brett, yourself and all the high performers you've had on here, if you're going to perform at a high level, when you wake up in the morning, most days are days where you probably don't feel like doing everything that you need to do to be successful, right?
Fair.
So if we were going to only perform on the days where we feel great or feel confident, we're going to take a lot of days off. So we're not going to perform at that level. You and I grew up in this society, and it's still true today. And most of the times I'm getting asked by parents, coaches, people, hey, can you help my child be more confident? Can you help my team be more confident? And I understand where they're coming from because I was taught the same thing growing up. And I was someone, when it came to sports, was low on confidence. I thought there was something wrong with me. Never thought I could be at my best because I never felt truly confident on the field. And then as I got into this field and got into this industry, and the more I work with people, I realized confidence is this pervasive thing that we put so much weight and we target it as a thing to get. And at the end of the day, there are countless people who are some of the best performers in the world and they never feel confident. Why? Because confidence is a feeling. What's more important than confidence? Well, the actual actions and behaviors that it takes to actually perform at a high level. And I make the case in the book, what's more important than confidence? Well, courage. Courage is more important than confidence. Give me you want your child to be fearless, you want your child to be courageous. Which one do you want? Give me courage every day of the week, because courage is doing what needs to be done, or the willingness to do what needs to be done, even when I'm fearful, nervous, or uncomfortable. Yeah. And that's what true success looks like.
I love that. So it reminds me of an article I used to read all the time when I was a young advisor. And it talks about successful people form the habit of doing things unsuccessful people aren't willing to do.
Yeah.
Right? The common denominator of success, I think, was the name of it. And great article, but it doesn't say that they build the habits because they enjoy it.
No.
Right?
No.
To your point, you may wake up some days and you're like, ugh, it's cold, I don't want to do it, it's stuff, but you still do it, and you still do it anyway. So what are the key obstacles, whether it's the business person, it's the athlete? Are there the same maybe 1, 2, 3 obstacles you're seeing showing up day in and day out?
Yeah. Well, you think about it, and it's if we're kind of taught that I can't do really well unless I'm confident. Well, that's always going to keep us in a small bubble, because how many of us are willing to try things when we're not good at them, knowing how it feels to fail, how it feels to be uncomfortable. And so if we perpetuate this idea that confidence is necessary to success, kind of our starting point is flawed from the beginning, because it's going to keep people in their comfort zones. Well, I'm not going to do that. Why? Well, I'm not any good at it. Like, isn't that the stupidest thing you've ever heard? Of course you're not any good at it, because you've never done it. You haven't tried it. We have kids kids all the time, like, hey, why aren't you willing to do that? Well, I don't know how to do that. Yeah, well, that's the whole point. So why aren't you willing to try it? Well, then they relate back to, well, when I started playing soccer, like, I was better than everyone on the field. So I'm going to gravitate towards the things where maybe there's some natural ability. Well, if we only do that, if we're just talking about growth mindset or fixed mindset, that's the recipe of fixed mindset. I only do the things where I feel a level of competence, a natural level of competence. As soon as I run into any obstacle or resistance, I go, oh, well, I guess I'm just not supposed to do that. So I steer away from it.
Do you still work on that, though? Do we need to work on it in the moment?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you're saying this. Sorry to interrupt, but I read 10 pages every day. And so this morning in my reading, they were talking about people that don't work on their weaknesses are messing up, right? You got to focus on that stuff. You got to get better and so on and so forth. But they explained it the way I was kind of like, okay. It's like, imagine eating an ice cream cone in the summertime. And the ice cream melts, right? And you got to go around and lick the edge. And it's like that's your weaknesses. Yeah. Right? And if you didn't work on them, i.e. lick around the cone, they're just going to go everywhere and make a huge mess. Right. So he said, stay confident, but stay conscious of those things and work on those things.
And I would say, too, when it comes to our strengths and weaknesses, I don't think the goal with our weaknesses is to spend so much time reversing our weaknesses as much as it is understanding what our weaknesses are, managing around them, improving and managing around them, but continuing to put our energy, our time, and our focus into our strengths so that we can maximize those strengths.
And I think that's hire for those people, like hire for my weaknesses.
Yes, hire exactly. If I'm in a leadership position, I'm going to hire the people who do the things that I don't do well, and they actually enjoy doing those things, and I don't do them. So it's but you can't ignore them. If you ignore them, you're in trouble. And so either hiring to fill that spot, or, you know what, hey, I'm a disorganized person. Trevor Moe has a book, It Takes What It Takes. Okay, so you either need to hire someone who's going to be organized for you, or you need to have enough organization in your life that it's not going to hold you back.
I love that. It's funny, I've got a quote on the back of my journal here from Trevor, and it says, average people become average by doing average shit. Average is a choice. Greatness is a choice. There is no magic, only decisions.
The great thing about Trevor is,
God rest his soul.
God rest his soul. Trevor is the best. I did plenty of events with Trevor, and it was usually depending on kind of like who the audience was, where I knew he knew that he could be a little bit more direct and kind of flippant. But Trevor would speak to an audience of high performers, and he'd be talking about, right, hey, it takes what it takes. If you're not good at this, you need to do what it takes to be proficient at it. And then he would always say, hey, listen, at the end of the day, he goes, we need average people in this world. He goes, we need average people in the world. He goes, we need average people so people like me, right, can pass
where he wants to go.
and be excellent. And then he would always say, hey, listen, you need to respect someone's right to be average. If they aren't willing to do what needs to be done, hey, man, you can respect their right and just let them be average.
I like that. He was Russell Wilson's coach, right?
Yes.
That's kind of his claim to fame.
Yeah.
Great author and stuff like that. So what about the people that may be listening? They got this idea, but they got to have the perfect business plan. And then the next thing and the next thing. It all has to be perfect before making that jump versus just the will to get it done. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think there's a balance in everything. The analogy I always come back to, Brett, is right, and I think I think you can, if you think about a river, and on either side of a river you got two river banks, right? So if on either side of the river, you take anything in life, and the opposite sides of the river banks are just kind of like the polar opposites. So let's say individually, one side of the river bank is structure, and the other side is spontaneity. And we could make an argument for either one. Structure's better, spontaneity is better. Well, it's not which one's better. It's what is sort of needed right now. And so like if I took my business, I'm like, all right, Travis, hey, where am I in the river? So I'm always asking myself, where am I in the river with this topic? Do I need more structure in my business? Do I need more spontaneity in my business? So I'm going to kind of move towards whichever riverbank, but knowing, just like anything else, the river's a moving thing.
Yeah.
And so what structure this month might be spontaneity next week. So take anything. Hey, I need to have the perfect business plan, or I'm someone who just shoots from the hip on everything. Well, neither one of those are going to be the solution all the time. And so if I've got something and I'm like, hey, it's almost perfect. I've got it, but I can't do it until it's perfect. You and I know that it's probably never going to be perfect, so they're probably not going to do anything. And it's like, okay, can I jump in the river knowing that it's not perfect yet, but as I get into the river and I start going down the river, I might realize actually it's pretty darn good right now. What I need to do is I need to take more chances. So I need to swim, and then also I might just be having ideas everywhere, and I might go, you know what? I need to get some discipline, and I need to hone in on one. So I think it's respecting, because we can get into personality types, we can get into profiles, we can get into everything and realize, hey, this person's more of a type A, or this is a D or I, and their personality isn't going to change. And so I can't force someone to be more kind of like spontaneous, because I'm naturally spontaneous.
Right.
Just like they need me to be more structured. I'm like, all right. It's kind of recognizing where you are and like leaning into, okay, like where do I kind of need to put that energy right now? And again, you think about the perfect, the perfect business plan, the perfect idea. And I think a lot of this goes back to, Brett, is just kind of a central idea in the book, which is so much of life is actually in our control. Most of life is outside of our control. And I say, what are the three things that you can control? I always control my attitude regardless what's going on.
Amen.
I control what I focus on regardless what's going on, and I control how I respond to whatever happens to me. Right? And so whenever I'm talking to this with professional athletes or high performers, anyone, I try to get their attention by saying, hey, we do not control 100% of what happens to us. And people go, whoa, wait a second,
Yeah.
whoa. And like you and I are talking today, hey, how many podcasts did you have scheduled today?
4, yeah.
How many are you doing today?
Yeah, 2.
Right? You can't control that. You can't control, single digit weather and a snowstorm that rolls through. We can't control a global pandemic being dropped on our lap and changing everything that we thought we were in control of. And so we can do everything right individually. I can make all the right choices, decisions, eat the right foods, get the right sleep, and still get a negative diagnosis from the doctor. I can do everything right in a sports contest and still have the referee make a bad call at the end of the game, which decides the thing. So I can't control 100% of what happens. I have influence, tremendous influence, but I don't control what happens to me, but I always control how I respond. I've got 100% control how I respond. Yeah. And that's not controlling the outcome, that's controlling my response. And so I think when it comes to someone's lack of willingness to kind of want to pull the trigger and actually just go for it, it's letting go. In the book I talk about surrendering, letting go of that attachment to control, surrendering control, and instead recognizing everything's not going to go the way that you want it to go, but do you trust yourself and your ability enough to react, respond, and adjust to whatever happens? That's what high performers do.
Yeah. It makes me think about just trusting yourself, trusting your gut, but also that faith over fear, right? Because we talked about, I was thinking about when we started Visionary, you had all these great plans. Well, certainly things happened that were different that you didn't plan for. I also think of a team we brought over in March of 2020. All the work we put in to what was going to happen, how they were going to get their clients. Literally like 72 hours into this saying, the world shut down. Nobody's going to talk to any human beings.
No.
But yet we had to adapt and change, and it ended up being great. But that wasn't part of the plan.
No. And so hopefully 2020 was a wake-up call for everyone to what little we actually control. And then you look back and, the question for everybody is, how did you respond in 2020? Whether that was your personal life, whether it was your professional life. Everyone had to adapt.
Yeah.
How did you adapt? How did you adapt in a way that set you up for success? And then looking at it and going, how didn't you respond, or what did you try to hold on to that maybe held you back? And so when I think about sort of our attachment to things, those are the things that are always going to get us stuck. Right? What am I attached to? I know that when I am feeling stressed or anxious, the question I ask myself is, what outcome am I attached to that I can't control? That's what's causing the stress.
Yep.
And so I'm trying to, I am so committed to an outcome that I can't control. Well, that's the stress and anxiety. What if I let go of that and said I can control whether that's going to happen? So I'm going to find peace at that.
Yeah.
I'm going to focus all my energy on responding to everything that comes up, and responding on purpose with authenticity as best as I can, and trusting myself and trusting the outcome that whatever it ends up being will be the best possible.
How do you do that,
one.
though? Because that's tough, right, man? It's just like, man, I think this is the thing that's going to happen, and I'm hell-bent on it.
Yeah.
How do we do that?
Yeah. I mean, I think that goes back to, I know you're someone that has a ton of habits and routines built into your day.
Yeah.
What are those habits and routines for? They're not to control your day. They're to help you to respond and adapt as effectively as possible.
Control this guy.
Yes, yeah. So we build these times like, why do I read things that educate me and inspire me and motivate me? Why do I take time to do reflection? Why do I take time to do journaling? Why do I take time to go out in nature? Why do I take time to connect with the people that I love? Why do I do these things? Because I know when things aren't going the way that I need them to go, that's the oxygen that I've been building up that allows me to be adaptable and flexible. And so it's finding peace on the front end, that if I realize that I'm never in control in the first place, when I catch myself trying to control something, hopefully a little trigger goes out that goes, hey, you don't control this. Release it, let it go.
Yep.
And it's funny. Where do I have to do this the most? Travel. Right? I spend most of my time flying for work, right? Flying, and inevitably, the more you travel, the more issues you're going to run into, whether it's delays, whether it's canceled flights, whether it's, tight connections, all this different stuff. You can be stuck on a runway and they're like, oh, sorry, folks, I'm going to have to sit here for another 45 minutes. And you're sitting there and you're like, there's nothing I can do. There's not, the more angrier I get, the bigger my problem's going to become. There's nothing I can do. So what can I do right now? I can sit and be present. I can breathe. I can notice my thoughts. I can notice what the anxiety is attached to. I get to choose how I respond. I can notice the person next to me and say, hey, I'm going to connect with this person, or I'm going to go, you know what? I can't go anywhere. I'm going to open up my laptop. I'm going to get that report done. But I can't control
Yeah, it doesn't change it.
with that plane. And so it's such a great, spin it as a positive. Travel is such a great classroom for having to surrender, let go, and just embrace what happens.
I'm trying to work on when people pull out in front of me, how I respond. Just I've told myself, you know what? Maybe that person kept me and my family from being in an accident.
There you go.
Like slowed me down a little bit.
Yeah. And then it gets into what story have I created about this person?
Yeah.
This person.
Plus, I'm running late, and I'm like, this is not good.
Doesn't this person know how important I am?
Exactly. They don't know I'm running behind, and they're just pulling right out in front of me.
Come on.
How do we build courage? So you talked about that earlier. How do we build more of it?
Yeah, how do we build courage? I think if I'm a parent, if I'm a coach, if I'm a teacher, even a business leader, like, how do I build courage? Well, I build courage. This isn't the easy answer, Brett, but first thing I need to do, if I'm looking to build courage in a team, in a student, in a child, in a player, I've got to ask myself as a leader, do I model courage? Do I model courage? And insert courage with anything that as a leader I want the people who follow me to do. Again, being a performance coach, I've been on a lot of sidelines, youth, college, and professional, and you have a leader preaching poise, and then they're
losing it.
They're losing it on the sidelines. So we realize people don't follow what we say; they follow what we do. And so, I've probably said this in the first podcast, right? My daughter, who's now 22, graduating from college this spring, when she was 14, she and I got into it, and she said, "Hey, Dad, for someone who teaches yes and, you sure like to say no." So I could laugh about it because, well, you're right, you got me.
Yeah.
You got me. And it's like, okay, I'm not modeling this thing that I say is so important, live in yes and. Yeah. Well, I'm clearly not modeling it with you.
Yeah.
And why would I expect you to do the thing that I say if I can't even do it with you? So first of all, do we model, whether it's courage or any behavior that we deem? So, okay, do we model it? Secondly, we have to realize that pervasive in this society is our relationship with failure is not a great relationship. And so what would prevent someone from being courageous? Well, the high likelihood that they're going to fail by being courageous. And if you're doing something courageous, you're doing something that's uncomfortable. And so, I talk about this in the book, but I remember having coaches, tell us before a game, "Hey man, there's nothing to be afraid of. You guys should be fearless out there." Well, if I'm filled with fear or nerves, well, what do I immediately think about myself?
Right.
Well, there's something wrong with me, right? There must be something wrong with me. And now I can't perform at my highest level because I'm not supposed to be afraid. Well, clearly, and I'm not confident, so I'm in trouble, right? So we invalidate. Why would we invalidate someone's feelings over something that's important? Right? Why would I try to, whether a kid's getting ready to take an exam or they're playing a big game and I come in and they're like, "Hey, I'm a big game today, coach," or "Hey, I got this big exam today, mom. Like, I'm really nervous about it." "Hey, there's nothing to be afraid of. You're fine." "What do you mean there's nothing to be afraid of? This is an exam. What do you mean?
Right.
This is a big team. Why wouldn't I be nervous?" Like, why would we invalidate that? Well, because we want them to be confident.
Yeah.
Don't feel what you're feeling. We need you to be confident because you can't perform enough. Instead of respecting or validating those feelings, I totally get it. I totally understand. Yeah, it's a big game. This team's never won a championship before. Of course they feel. Why wouldn't they? And so when you can validate it and go, "Yeah, of course I get it. Hey, tell me more about, why that's making you nervous." Well, and then you talk about it. You're showing up with empathy. You're showing up, just totally respecting their experience. Like, "Hey, I totally get it. I understand. Hey, now we can shift. Hey, in order to play a good game today, what 2 or 3 things do you need to do in the game today to have a good game? Now what are we talking about?"
Right.
We're talking about the actions.
Yeah.
We're talking about behaviors. We're talking about execution. We're not talking about feelings anymore. I validated your feelings. That's great.
Yep.
All right, what do you need to do today to have a good game? "Oh, I need to shut my guy down." Right? Yeah. He is not going to turn. I can't let him turn. He's an all-state forward. If I let him turn, we're in trouble. Awesome. So what do you need to do? I need to stay awesome. What else do you need to do? "Oh, hey, when I get the ball, I need to look to hit that ball, or I need to switch fields." Right? Awesome. All right. If you do those 2 or 3 things today, all game, do you think you played a good game? "Yeah, I think I played a good game." Doesn't matter if he's confident or she's confident. Doesn't matter, right? So we're respecting, appreciating, validating whatever someone's feeling. But then as a leader, we're moving them into, okay, well, what should we be focused on? We don't need to be focused on feelings out there. We need to be focused on the game, the action, the behavior. Do this, do this, do this. And I'm locked in on what I'm doing. I'm less distracted by how I'm feeling.
Love that. I call it your comfort zone callus, right? The more you get out of your comfort zone, too, I think that builds some courage.
Yeah.
I know for me, along the way, right?
Yeah.
The more phone calls I made early on, then the easier the next call became.
Yeah.
And the more I practiced what I needed to say, the better it became. And apologize with the construction noise, of course, they're doing
Hey, we yes-and it, right? It's just it's part of the process.
It's part of the process.
Literally, it's being built in the process. Everything that you're doing is being built while we do this.
Yes. So, well, if I followed you around, what are some of the things? This is the obvious, right? That we exercise, staying active, those types of things. But is there 1 or 2 things for you that's the difference maker that if I followed you around, I'd see it every day?
Wow. All right. Maybe that'll expose me as being a phony, Brett, in the process. You know what? I try to, and going back to hey, at the end of the day, what do I model? right? So I try to model, authenticity, and I try to model collaboration.
Yep.
Authenticity for me is how I treat anyone, is how I treat everyone. Authenticity for me is never taking myself too seriously, and hopefully, regardless of the situation, paying attention to how I respond to it. Am I responding in a way that is representative of what's most important to me as a person, right? So, I have a purpose statement that is sort of my North Star. It's my guiding light, right? My purpose statement is to inspire myself and others to live their authentic brilliance, right? And so I use that as a transparency that I hold up over, okay, any work that I do, can I say that purpose statement and say, yes, this work is a representation of that, right? And for the most part, like, I'm getting up, I'm speaking in front of people all the time, I'm coaching, I'm like, am I inspiring myself and them to be their best authentic brilliant? Yes. Okay, boom. Well, then I'm like, all right, I need to bring that to my marriage as well.
Right.
Am I treating my wife in a way that taps in, right? Am I treating my kids in the same way? Well, what about the person at Starbucks? Like, do they not count?
Yeah.
So how am I living that? And hopefully, unless I'm having a really, really bad day, hopefully, regardless of what's
okay to have
what's going on, it is okay to have. Regardless of what's going on, am I just being a pretty compassionate, decent person?
How long do you think, or how old do you think you were when you knew that mission statement? Like, for me, you can see it on this microphone, right?
Yeah.
F greater than P is helping you achieve a future greater than your past.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
that is, I say it once a day, I'll say it 100 times
Yep.
in a day. I have hats with this logo
Yeah.
on it, right?
Yeah.
And so it kind of is this thing that people know what that is, right? My friends, people around my circle.
Yeah.
Somebody that doesn't know their F greater than P, or
Yeah.
doesn't know
Yeah.
their mission statement,
Yeah.
purpose statement. How old were you, and how did it come about for you?
Yeah, it came about for me is when I decided, probably around 2004, 2005, when this is the work that I wanted to do. It's, was that 30? Do the math. I'm 51, right? So 2004. And I was like, all right. So at that point, it was doing a deep dive into personal development and having me needing to go in and get trained and schooled and then start living these ideas themselves. And so the program that I went through was called Living with Mastery. And part of living with mastery is living intentionally, authentically on the best version of yourself. And so we were encouraged that was a week-long class. And then I did a 2.5 year class with a group of people. But I had articulated that purpose statement for myself in that living with mastery class. And the language changed a little bit over the next couple of years, but the essence was there. And so anyone who's thinking about, oh shoot, I don't have a mission statement, or I don't have a purpose statement, and I encourage everyone to just spend time thinking about it. Right, the actual statement is less important than giving yourself permission to have a sense of clarity of what that looks like and what that feels like for you. And again, if we can put it into a statement and put it on the back of microphones, put it, on your mirror, put it in your closet. For the longest time, I had my mission statement hanging in my closet, right? We made these little signs for ourselves in class, then I had it in my closet. I'm going to see that at least twice a day. Getting dressed in the beginning of the day, bookends, and getting undressed at the end of the day, bookends. And it's just like, okay, this is who I'm going to be today, check. And at the end of the day, is that who you were today? Check. And a lot of times, like, oh shoot, I got some work to do. But it's really boiling it down to, for me, it's like, hey, when you feel best about yourself and it's not about you, right? What are you doing, and what are the qualities that you're expressing, right? Because really, our purpose statement isn't about us. It's about how we serve others, how we show up for others. And for me, I realized I'm a pretty extroverted person. How about this? I'm extroverted with substance. I'm not the guy who likes to just go out to bars or I want to small. No, I'm extroverted for connection. Give me a group of people who want to talk about
talk shop
stuff, life. Yeah, that empowers me. What I found was that was my sweet spot. I loved being in those team environments, having deep conversations, working with people And I was like, all right, well, that's kind of unlimited. You can bring that to anything that you do. And then so your purpose to me is your why. The expression of it is your what. Well, the what can be infinite.
Yep.
The why is changeless. So just bring your why to everything that you do.
Yep. And I think too, the more you talk about it, right? I mean, it's just ingrained. It's like who you are. It's in your core, right? I could, show up at your house middle of 4 a.m. and say, "Tell me your purpose statement," and you're just gonna, rattle it off. Right?
Well, St. Louis men's soccer team, they've got their three pillars or 3 anchors: character, teamwork, fighting spirit. Right? On their own, those are pretty vanilla, right? But what we do with those is we talk about them all the time. So I call it the DNA, right? This is the DNA of our program. This is who we are. There's hundreds of values that would work, but these are the 3 that we've decided, and these are the 3 that we're going to keep coming back to, and these are the 3 we're going to talk about, and these are the 3 we're going to measure, and these are the 3 we're going to keep figuring out ways to turn into behaviors and actions. That's where most organizations fail, right? We got the purpose right, we got the vision right, we got our values right, but the real culture is the behaviors. So how do we take the mission, vision, and values and turn those into actionable behaviors? And so the more we think about, well, what would that look like? What does teamwork look like? What does fighting spirit look like? And how are we living it? And who's living it? So I start off every session, Brett, by going, all right, guys, I just did this on Friday, right? All right, teamwork. In the last week and a half since you guys have seen me last, who in this room has been a good teammate and why? And now they start talking about each other. Who's been expressing character? Boom. Who's been expressing fighting spirit? And all of a sudden, now they're like, oh, yeah, this is who we are. Well, who's been doing it? Well, Brett's been doing it. Why? Because, he's always encouraging us when we're working. And so the more you talk about it, the more you measure it, the more you turn it into behaviors, it just becomes the ethos of who you are.
Yeah. Solid, man. It drives your culture.
It is. I mean,
you look at even some college basketball teams. I've been paying attention to this lately, watching a lot of college basketball. My kids are really into it. You watch them when they come off, right? They get subbed in, and you watch the guy. They'll high five the first couple people, and then they sit down, right? Yeah. But then you watch some of those teams, man. They go to every single person, even the trainer down at the end of the bench,
all the way down the end of the bench.
And they're doing this, they're hugging, they're doing whatever, and then they go sit down, right? And I think that's a little thing that people don't pay attention to, but man, it goes a long way, doesn't it?
It's a little thing that creates big results, and I guarantee by the time we're seeing it on TV, that player's not thinking about doing that anymore. That is a behavior that has been ingrained. And now they don't even need to think about it. So when it doesn't happen, it sticks out like a sore thumb. Yeah. And when I think about culture, right, I think the greatest way to kind of like describe in the simplest forms like what culture is. Culture is this is how we do things here. Yep. Right. I walk into a space. I walk into an environment. All I have to do is watch that team or watch that organization for a few minutes, and all of a sudden I realize, this is how they do things here. Yeah. This is how they talk to one another. This is how they treat each other. This is how they treat the space. This is how, and you're like, oh yeah, this is how we do things here. Oh look, everyone's picking up trash after the game. This is how we do things here. Oh look, they don't yell at the referees. This is how we do things here. Oh, they're not disrespectful to you. Oh, this is how we do things here. So, as the new person into that culture, what do you do immediately? You go, oh okay, I guess this is how we do things here. And if I'm going to be successful here, I should probably do the same thing.
It's funny. Makes me think. We call it. It's very technical here at Visionary. We call it the no asshole rule. Yeah. And I say that in my first meeting. Anytime I meet somebody, they're like, what's the vision and where are you going? Yeah. I'm like, well, the vision is just don't be an asshole. Right.
That covers a lot of things.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah. Because it's like we can have this grand vision and you want to do A, B, and C, but at the end of the day, like me, I want to be able to look at my phone, pull up my calendar, and never see somebody on here that's a complete asshole that I don't want to be around. Yeah. Right? And that's what's important for me as a leader of an organization. I don't want to have that on my calendar. I've worked too hard for 24, 25 years to then be like, oh, I got to go see this guy or gal next Tuesday. Like, I don't want to do it. No. Right? And so that's what drives our culture. Future greater than your past. Don't be an asshole. Yeah. Pretty simple, right?
I love it. The New Zealand All Blacks, right, had the similar one, right?
Oh, did they?
It's in James Kerr's book, Legacy, which is a must read. Okay. He talks about one of their core values, and it's one of the top core values is no D heads, right?
I love it.
And so that kind of cuts through. They're like, hey man, you might be the most talented guy in the country,
right?
But if you're an asshole, right? This isn't culture for you.
This ain't working.
Yeah.
It's just not working.
Yeah.
Talk about coaching. Take yourself out of it for a minute. I know it's not. This question is not geared towards that, but I've had a business coach for years. Yeah. and did it before I could really even afford the business coach I had.
Yeah.
How important is it for that person listening right now to have a business coach or a life coach in their life?
Yeah, I think it's crucial, right? And again, I think if you go up the ladder of successful people, I would love to know what percentage of them have coaches.
Yeah.
I think it's funny, and I'm sure you can relate to this. The more successful you become, the higher you move up the leadership ranks, the more isolated and lonely you are.
Mm-hmm.
Which is even more of a reason that you need to have someone that you can go to, that you can be vulnerable, you can be honest, you can use as a sounding board, you can just, you can emotion dump, you can right, and just someone who is going to hear you, listen to you non-judgmentally, and just process some of that back to you so that you can have a sense of clarity. And I think the most successful people recognize the value in that. I mean, the majority of the work I do, I'm creating a safe space for someone who's in usually a high performer in a high pressure situation, just to get out some of the stuff that they're feeling. And then we can just redirect it. We can, again, validate. In the book, Brett, I talk about, right, this is like my equation to courage, which is V plus E equals P. V is validate, right? Yep. Anyone who comes to me as their coach, anyone that comes to me, I always validate their feelings.
They're not negotiable.
Because why would I invalidate them? Yeah. They're having them, right? So it's not a battle. Like, you're feeling this? Awesome. Tell me about it, right? It's valid because you're feeling it. So you validate it, and then once they feel heard and valued, and there's nothing wrong with you. No, there's nothing wrong with you. Okay, cool, right. Now we can move to E, which is encourage. Now we just kind of come back to, all right, we accept, okay, so this is how you're feeling, great, awesome, I understand. All right, now, but what are you trying to accomplish? Well, I have this deadline, or I have this game, or I have this test, whatever it is, awesome, okay. Now we move to, all right, hey, what's the most important things for you to focus on right now? What do you have to get done? Well, I've got to get done. Where do you have to grow? Well, I have to do this. And now we're talking, okay, what's it going to take for you to do that? It's them recognizing what they need to do. Now they're coming up with the plan. Yep. They're coming up with, right? We haven't ignored, we haven't discredited anything that they're feeling or any of the obstacles. We've called them, but what do you need to do if we're going to get it? All right.
Well, if you don't validate it, they're going to walk out that door, and then they're just going to go right back to that feeling, right?
They're going to go right back to it, and so that you can't get to the encouragement until you validate it. And then what do you get as a result? Well, you get you get progress. They're going to take action, and they're going to make progress. And you might have to go, all right, well, let's do it again. How you feeling now? Well, not. And you keep moving. So it's seeing performance just like anything. It's a process. It's in a process of like, all right, hey, where are you this week? What do you need to focus on this week? And when you're working with a coach who you talk to regularly, hey, before you and I talk again in 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, what are the actions that you're committed to doing in that time? Yep. Now they have a plan, and when we get on the phone again, hey, did you do what you said you're going to do? If yes, great. Tell me how it went. What do you do next? If no, all right. What happened? What got in the way? What obstacles got in the way? Let's figure it out. Let's address them. Make a plan, and we move forward. Yeah. But if we don't, but that's someone who's looking to be held accountable.
Yeah. And they want to grow.
Yeah, they want to grow. And I'm as guilty as anyone, right? We can hide from that accountability, and we can keep ourselves busy by doing other things. It's like, busyness is the enemy of of being effective, right? I can be so busy and get nothing done. Or get nothing meaningful done in the process, and just tell, hey, look, I didn't have time. Look how busy I was. Look how busy I was. But if you have a coach or someone that you can talk to and go, hey, okay, you need to delegate that. Yep. What's more important, this or that? What's it going to take for you to do that? And hey, I'm here. I'm here to shine a light on it and help keep you accountable.
Love it. I'm going to turn the page a little bit. All this phenomenal stuff, but parenting. Okay, so I thought of this question the other day. I don't know even what made me bring it up, but I thought to myself, where's the hardest part? Your oldest is a senior in college, you said, and then a junior is your youngest. What do you think the hardest or most stressful part of parenting has been? Talk to that parent that's, got these kids.
Yeah. Oh man, here's the story, Brett. So my my middle son, or my middle child, oldest son, my middle child is a distance runner.
Okay.
Right. So I think this encapsulates it for me as a parent. So he came to the Principia School his sophomore year of high school. He's a boarding student. We were living in Florida at the time. He's running in the state meet, the state cross country meet. Right. This is the final meet of the season. He's like maybe the third best runner on his team. They've got a legitimate chance to win state. So I fly in. I was with the national team at the time, so I flew in. I was going to national team camp the next day. I pick up my daughter. We get there, race time, boom, race good. And so it's great here. The one in Missouri, you can kind of see the runners on the 3-mile course a couple of different times. So we're watching him. He seems to be running at a quick pace. We get to the finish line. It's kind of like cool. It's like on a hill. So you see the runners coming, and their whole last 200 yards or so is a straight shot to a finish line. A little bit of an incline, but it's kind of stadium, and so it's great. So we get to the finish line, and all of a sudden, it's like I'm seeing the runners coming. I'm seeing the runner. I'm like, where's Holland? I'm like, he was running at a high pace. Yeah. Where is he? And all of a sudden, I see him coming around the corner, and it's all of a sudden he is running so hard, and he's not going anywhere. Right? He hit that wall. He hit the wall. And so it's like he's on a treadmill that's not going anywhere, and I can see his body, and as a dad, I've got panic. Yeah. I'm like, oh no, and he's wobbly, right? And so I'm just screaming out, go Holland, you're almost there, go Holland. Right? He gets about 15 yards short of the finish line, and the legs and the knees buckle, and he goes down. So as a dad, I'm just devastated. I mean, my heart's breaking for him. So, I'm like Adrian at the end of Rocky. I'm cutting through the fans. I'm like trying to get going. I'm just get up, Holly, get up. And he gets up, and he takes a few steps, and he wobbles, and he falls down. And it's just kid after kid is passing. And Brett, I remember it's like you talk about being able to observe your emotions and observe your feelings, being the observer instead of the feeler. I'm working my way towards my son. And I still get choked up. I remember feeling so bad for him. And at the same time, thinking to myself, this is amazing. Yeah. This is going to be fuel that is going to possibly change his life in a powerful, powerful way. And I'm holding both of those at the same time as I'm trying to get to him. And he finally crosses the finish line. and now he's in a spot that the parents can't get to. And he's back there for like 15 or 20 minutes, and they're working on him, right? Because so he finally comes out, and he's still just in a haze, and he just collapses into my arms. And he's just sobbing. He's sobbing because he let his team down. Right? They took second in state. And I'm just like, oh, right, hey, right, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. And he's distraught. And then finally, they're trying to give him fluids and everything, and they take him, and he's just laying down. He's getting fluids, and his coach comes up to me, and I was like, Coach, what happened? Yeah. And he looks at me and a smile on his face, and he said he was running a minute faster than his fastest time. He just didn't know. He was young. His first big race. He didn't know how to regulate. He so badly wanted to outperform. He just, the adrenaline and everything got to him, and he hit that wall. Yeah. And his coach looked at me and said, there's going to be a lot of runners on the bus ride home today thinking they could have done more. He's not one of them. No. And I just remember thinking like, okay, he's had this experience. The pain is real, the hurt is real, the disappointment is real. He can use this. How is he going to use it? That's up to him. So to answer your question, the biggest thing parents do, the hardest thing for parents not to do is to let our kids suffer. And when I say suffer, I mean, we've heard of snowplow parents, we've heard of whatever, It's so easy to go, hey, this was really tough on me when I was growing up. I want to make sure you don't have to go through the challenges I went through. But I'm like, you are who you are because you went through the challenges that you went through. So how can we do both? How can I create a space that ultimately I think my child's going to be okay, but I also know it's going to require them to, if suffer is not the right word, get outside their comfort zone and fail and struggle and feel what that feels like, knowing that what that builds in the process. My job as the parent is to know that they always have someone to come back to that has their back and will love them unconditionally. But my job is not to do the hard thing for them or try to remove the obstacles along the way. And it's so much easier said than done. But I think that's really the key for parents to try to navigate that in a way where, hey, you didn't make the team. Am I going to call the organization and say, hey, my son, hey, I worked for the national team. Why did my son make that team? Yeah. Or do I go, whether we agree with it or not,
what are we going to do?
What are we going to do about it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing, man. It's It's funny because you're the first person I've asked that question to, and so I'm 1 for 1 on a guy crying.
Now
tearing up. You know?
we set the standard. If you don't get tears every time, they just weren't. They weren't vulnerable enough.
Yeah, we were at a Swing for Hope board meeting the other day, and we were eating lunch together as a team, and I said, I think I have a new question I'm going to ask on the podcast. And so we went around the room, and we all had kids, and some were in their 30s. The kids were in their 30s, right? And they had grandkids, and then me, I still got a 5th grader, and so. There's that level, man. It's different, right? It's just different worries. Whether it's you worry they're going to choke on the Lego when they're little, or they're going to
totally.
Then they get their driver's license, and now they're off to college, and we're not out of that college phase yet, you and I. So there'll be difficulties with that, right? So I know I'm curious to learn from people on what that hardest part is. But that was a great answer, man, and I appreciate it. So tell us, what do you think? Why should people go out and buy Confidence is Overrated?
Yeah, I've been just really grateful for the feedback and the feedback that people have shared with me. It was an easy book, and I say easy. Like once I started writing it, once I finished it, it seemed like a pretty easy process. And then I realized, I kind of have been sitting and accumulating this for like the last 9 years since my first book. I say in the book, when I think back, like this is the book I needed when I was younger. And had I been able, we all do the whole thing. If you go back and talk to yourself, right? If I could have gone back, if 51-year-old me could go back and speak to 14-year-old, 16, even 18-year-old me and say, hey, listen, there's nothing wrong with you. In fact, what you're feeling, kind of most people are feeling it. And so instead of thinking there's something wrong, hey, let's try this. Let's focus. Let's embrace this and focus on this instead. And I know that there's a lot of people that can relate to it. And so I've gotten just great feedback from people who are like, I'm using this in the relationship in my marriage. I've sent numerous books to family members, and so it's it really is story driven. Taking a lot of stories from my years with the national team, still working with professional players, right down to working with youth players. I get called from parents all the time like, hey, my son really struggles with confidence, or my daughter really struggles with confidence, and I was like, yeah, I get it. And it brings me so much satisfaction to be able to have someone especially a kid, when they start to tell me why they're not confident, and when I'm able to say, oh yeah, no big deal, that sounds about right. And they look at me like, well, what do you mean? Yeah. I'm like, oh yeah, I totally get it. Yeah, I think, most people can relate to that.
I love it. Well, I will be reading this and putting it on social media, and we'll put a link in the show notes here.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Really excited about it. It was funny, you spoke to our Althoff soccer team.
Yeah,
and, it would have been October of 2022, and we had just gotten second in state in 21. And then we were going to the Final Four right before you spoke to us. We win the game. We go to the finals game, and it's just a game from hell and back. And we'll get into all the details. But we lose that one again, right? And it's so this yes and doesn't mean it's yes and in the moment, right? It doesn't it's going to mean it's going to happen. Oh, you talked today, so that this weekend we're going to win the state title, right?
Yeah.
But having that mentality through life, I think is the big deal. Then you fast forward 23, they lose in the sectional championship. You go into 24, they win the state title, right? That's a commitment. That's a culture. These guys had to lose for these guys to win.
Yeah.
And our coaches did a great job of, it gives me chills thinking about it. Our coaches did a great job of making that state championship about the program.
Yeah.
Right? It was a program win. Not, yes, these guys got the medal, right? He can tell his brother he's a state champ, right?
And he does.
But it's a program deal. And so I just wanted to comment on that talking that yes and doesn't mean it's going to happen overnight.
No, it doesn't. There's an analogy that it's funny. A friend of mine who's a mental coach used this analogy, and I recently told him, I was like, hey, Josh Liffrock. I was like, Limitless Myself. Like, hey, Josh, man, I've been using your lottery ticket analogy so much. And he goes, what are you talking about? I was like, he goes, I didn't say that. I'm like, well, I've been giving you credit for it.
You have now.
And so the way I understand it, and it plays into that yes and is, and I think that soccer program is a great example of it, right? So imagine, right, if you go back to 4 years ago and you tell that coach, you tell that program, hey, listen, at the end of every week, we're going to have a raffle, right? The beginning of the week, everyone gets a ticket, right? And every time you make a good choice this week, you have a good training, you're a good teammate, you get good sleep, you eat well. Every time you make a good choice, you get another ticket, right? So you go through the week, and what are you focused on? Getting tickets. Yeah. Good behavior, good behavior. At the end of the week, you show up, and you're like, man, I got 50 tickets. And all your teammates, well, I got 5 tickets, 10 tickets. Yeah. Some guys, I didn't do anything. I have that one ticket. And we're going to draw a ticket and give the prize. You've got 50 tickets. Is it guarantee you're going to win it? No. So your ticket doesn't get drawn. All right, we're going to do the same thing at the end of next week. Yeah. Well, what's your focus? Well, screw this, man. I did all that hard work and nothing happens. Yeah. Or you go, what? Hey, all I can control is what? Making good choices, and when I make good choices, I get good tickets. So you do the same thing week after two. It doesn't win. What's eventually going to happen if you stick with it? What's eventually going to happen?
Eventually going to win.
You're eventually going to win. And then what is the likelihood of you having continued success and building off of that success?
Very high.
Right? And so when you, just like Coach all says, you control what you can control. We control our behaviors. And when we commit to championship behaviors, we're eventually going to win championships. And we can't control how and when it's going to happen. All we can control is that we are committed to championship behaviors, and it is going to happen. There's the belief, right? The belief it's going to happen. We don't know when, but we know it's going to happen. So we can control is the behaviors. And then you get there, and then how do teams sustain success? They stay committed to the behaviors. It's not about winning the championships. It's staying committed to the behaviors. And it's like, to be able to see that play out and to see that progression is really cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. Travis Thomas, thank you, my man, for being on the Circuit of Success podcast.
Thanks for having me, Brett.
It's been awesome.
Pleasure.